Sark to Jersey is presented in association with Sark Tourism.
"32 years after it was first rowed, the Sark to Jersey is still the premier rowing race in the Channel Islands. Last year, a record 67 crews entered the 19-mile test of strength and stamina. First over the line were Jersey Bowl, gaining revenge over the winners from the previous 2 years, Guernsey's Fitness Factory. But it was the pairs that drew the attention of the onlookers. Just 3 months before setting out on the Atlantic rowing race, the three crews were racing against each other for the last time. Ian Blandon and Rob Cassin were first home this time, but just a minute behind them was old friend and rival John Van Catwick. The huge publicity surrounding the efforts of the three crews in the race to Barbados has helped stimulate a renewed interest in the sport. This year there's 74 entrants, another new record. But for one man, that race spelled the end of a long rowing career. When you finished the Atlantic race, I think you said, never again. Have you been tempted to row? Have you been rowing?
No, I haven't done any rowing at all. I've just sat in the stern of a Fours ladies sliding boat, and that's it. Done nothing else.
Have you not missed it?
Not at all. I don't feel the need to get on those oars again.
I don't think there's even a Van Catwick this year in the race. Is that unusual?
Yeah, it is unusual because there's probably been one in the race for about 20 years now, and this is the first year that there's been without one.
Tell me a bit about the race. How much of it is tactical?
The only thing that's tactical about it is to get your course right. If you've got a good course, then you're okay. If you tend to stray too far to the west, then you've got to fight all the tide back to Jersey again, which you can put an extra 10, 15, 20 minutes on your race.
And the thoughts when you finish the race?
Glad it's another one over. And then just get up to the bar.
Well, John may not be taking part in this year's race, but 4 of the Atlantic rowers are. Carl Clinton's taking part in the singles, Rob Cassin is taking part with his wife in the mixed pairs, and Jeff Gavy's taking part in the men's pairs. Ian Blandon is coxing a novice crew. But of course, the Atlantic rowers weren't the only people who made news last year. No one who was on the finishing line will forget this novice crew who started taking on water. They bravely battled on and eventually finished, and were given a special award for merit. Believe it or not, some of them are back this year for more. Well, those rowers, together with the other crews, are now behind me, getting ready for the start. The 2-week delay to the race has forced 7 crews to pull out, including one from Ireland. But there is still a record 67 here on the start line. The winds caused that cancellation, but it's the lack of wind which might cause more problems here today. The increasing numbers of entrants makes the start an important part of the race, and it's a chance for the bigger boats to break free from the melee. Last year's winners, the Deutsche Morgan Grenville crew, are well versed in their start line technique.
You should get out there early, pick your spot, and then obviously people are going to come up next to you and tussle with you. The thing to do is to remain focused and let the cox control the boat, not be shouting at anybody else, and just row, and you'll find people will scatter. They will move. If they see you're not going to move, they will move away. But it is a bit tight and tense.
I think the main thing for our style of boat is to sort of get away from the smaller crews, and we'll just sort of play it by ear from there.
I'm used to only having 6 boats on the start line, so having 10 times that many should be quite exciting. But it's very important to get a good start, even though you're rowing for an hour or 2 hours in the case of the Sark race.
We're all ready for the race now. I think there's nothing more we can do now. If we haven't got it now, we won't have it.
The win's the most important thing. The record's a bonus, so we're not bothered about time now.
But one team was out to snatch back the winner's trophy. Standard Charter, crewed by the Fitness Factory, were hoping to avenge last year's defeat, which was a rare blip on their excellent record.
We first rowed in a 5s, and then a 6 as a challenge to break that 2-hour barrier. And then we broke into 4s as again another challenge.
What makes you want to do the Sark Jersey year after year?
Well, it's the premier race. I mean, it's the intervincial, if you like, and it's always nice to try and beat the Jersey.
Last year we did row a good race, but unfortunately our tactics didn't pay off, and hopefully this year things will be slightly different.
The Quilter & Co boat was packed full of experience, with all the rowers having won the race in the past.
Really, this year we decided we'd put a veterans crew together for the London River race, in September. So we're all over 40. Unfortunately, I'm over 50, still managing to compete, and enjoying it.
What's the key to getting a good team then?
A bit of luck in who's left.
I've been rowing for about 11, 12 years now, but I've done most of the classes. I've done sixes, fours, pairs and singles.
How important is steering the course?
Extremely important, yeah. The course can save you 2 or 3 miles if you get it right. And so, of course, 2 or 3 miles advantage, really.
They decide, obviously, with my crew, they've got quite a lot of experience throughout the 4 rowers. They've done about 20, 25 years of rowing experience with the Sark race as well, so it's all a team effort of getting the right course.
Someone else who knows the right course is Annie Carey. The Barclays Explorer Cox still holds the record for the ladies' singles.
I've loved rowing, but I love coxing. I just love being on the sea.
We row as a team, and the Sark to Jersey is the highlight of the season, really.
What attracts you to the sport of rowing?
The pain, the suffering, the sores, everything, really. The pleasure too. Just nice being on the water.
Once you start, you get into it, it's tough. And then when you hit the patch, you're wondering where everybody else is.
If you've hit it on target, it's a great feeling and it gives you that bit of a buzz to get home.
Guernsey always seems to do well in the ladies' pairs and look to have a good chance again. X4's rowers, Margie Jonsson and Liz Bellow, are a new pairing, but both have considerable experience of the race.
We usually set our course, but you always wonder when somebody's going off in a different direction, have we done the right thing? Do they know something that we don't?
What's normally your thoughts as you're on there on the starting line?
Very nervous. The adrenaline's going and you're just thinking, well, we hope we don't get too many blisters and just make it to the end and look forward to the night partying.
This year, for the first time in many, the ladies' singles class was competed. For pairs record holder Sue Wally, this is a venture into a different world.
Oh, very different. I now have to do everything. I can't just sit and produce the power when I'm asked to. I have to take into consideration the tides, I've got to learn the courses and basically look where I'm going and row at the same time. So a big learning curve this season, but it's been interesting and had some highlights. The record has stood for a long time. 82, I think the record was set, and it's 2 hours, 53 minutes. I think it's going to take some beating, and it depends very much on the conditions, as it always does for the Sark Jersey. If I can get around 3 hours this year, I'll be well pleased, and then next year I can really get to grips with the boat and really attack it maybe next year.
Only one person has a complete set of medals for finishing the race. Snip Giels had more retirements than Frank Sinatra ever did, but this time he was positive that this will be his last swan song, his 32nd and last race. As the end approached, it was Standard Charter who were leading the way.
You need the wind behind you, a certain amount of surf, because the surf helps when you get to Jersey. If there's surf behind you, even though it's quite hard to row, it actually pushes you along much quicker. And I think if the tide's right and the wind's right, and it's not too hot, I think it can be broken.
How do you manage to keep morale at a high point in the boat?
I think just picking the right moment to give them any sort of, commands, or just try and keep their spirits up and just encourage them when I do feel that, perhaps their spirits are a bit low or they need it. But
other than that, they're all sort of quite self-motivated. So.
And they were certainly motivated enough to hold on to the lead that they'd forged right from the off. A year ago, they lost their crown as the top Channel Island rowing crew to the Jersey Bowl boat. That loss just inspired them to come back this year on top form.
It's one of the best team performances that I've been involved with in many years, and I'll put that alongside Marathis and football Marathis, basketball Marathis that I've been lucky enough to be involved with. But these people in this boat today really pulled out some work, and like I said, it's one of the best team performances. And Beverly, who's our cox and the boss, for some reason or other we lost our compass at the start of the race. So she's been steering off the rest of the crews and, on her instincts, and I think it's just, well, she's a Staples, really.
Women's winners Novum also had to overcome troubles. Their rudder broke, but they managed to win on the run-ins.
It was quite flat and it was really hard work. We went quite far out, but then at the Paternosters we met up with everybody. Barclays, we had a really good race with them. They raced really well. Along there, it was so hard. So a big hand to them, they did very well. But that was a hard race, that one, yes.
The men's pairs went to Guernsey men Andy Chappell and Ian Greening.
No, the conditions were good. It was, I think it was well worth cancelling it 2 weeks ago. The conditions were very good. A bit disappointed about the time, but well, first boat is our first priority really. So yeah, very pleased, even though you can't talk to me yet.
Come on guys, you're doing brilliant!
The women's pairs was another close finish, but it was Margie Johnson and Liz Bellow who held on.
It was hot, but it was a really good race, very calm.
How have you done?
I'm not sure, but I hope we're first. We only saw one other pair, and that was Paul and Alison from Guernsey, a really hard race coming in really close. So it's good.
It was quite smooth actually today. It was hot to start with, but then the sun went down, which was great. But yeah, the conditions were quite nice. We didn't really have much chop at all, so it was very smooth most of the way. And we probably could have done with a bit more chop to give us a bit more push. Sometimes it's nice to have a bit of run behind you, so that it helps you along. But I think we did okay considering. Don't you think?
No, it's all right. The race, bit calm for this kind of boat though.
And there were more celebrations for Gina when her boyfriend won the singles title.
It's very hot, the whole race. Very, I found it difficult with the heat, but it's a good race.
Having won the pairs for the last 2 years, Sue Wally's switch to singles paid dividends with another win.
Really hard. Got to the Pats in the time I wanted to, and then I burned it a bit and I think I died. I died at the end. I don't know what the time is. I don't think I've done it. I don't think I've done it.
But there was a record for one man. Snip Gill completed his 32nd successive race.
It was really wonderful to finish, and there'll be no more Sark jerseys. That's my finale. Yeah, I enjoyed it. Very warm today.
Guys, you should thank all these guard books. It's really
really
hard
enjoyed
to get
it.
a guard book for the
Sark to Jersey was presented in association with Sark Tourism.
Well, you both set out you both completed what you set out to achieve, and that was to row to the Isle of Wight. What sort of journey was it?
It was a very nice journey, very eventful. In the end it got a bit rough, but apart from that it was a very good journey.
Yeah, you must have come through some pretty rough water though.
Oh, it was very rough at times, but we did expect to get it fairly rough at times. You know.
Did you check the weather forecast at all?
Oh yeah, we had to, right to the last minute we had the weather forecast report.
Yeah.
And we still had it in the boat with us. So.
What did you carry on the boat in the way of equipment, etc.?
Well, we had 7 oars, 3 big oars and 4 little oars on board. We had a radar reflector, flares, life jackets, 2 compasses, radio transmitter we had as well for sending out SOS.
What about food? Do you have much
food? We had plenty of food and
yeah,
quite a bit of drink, you know, as far as orange and a bottle of rum as well. Just
Picked up some blisters on the way, I should think, didn't you?
Yes, only on our rear end of our bottoms, you know.
Yeah. Whereabouts did you land in the Isle of Wight?
That was at Ventnor.
Was it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I see. What was the story about these flares? I was under the impression that you sent up flares when you were actually on the island, but I believe this isn't the case, is it?
No, we were about 20 miles off the coast, and the wind was getting up nasty, and we just heard the latest weather report, so we thought we better send up a flare as we were very close to an oil tanker. And this was about 8 o'clock in the evening, I suppose, and we hung on there for 2 or 3 hours and nothing happened, so we carried on rowing again, and then about 1 o'clock in the morning we got close to another, we presume was another tanker then, but that was closer in, and the Coast Guards picked up that flare, but neither of the tankers did nothing about it. But the Coast Guard reported it to the lifeboat, which did come out, but it takes the lifeboat about 3 hours to get there anyway, so we'd have got onto the beach by then.
You were actually on the beach by the time the lifeboat got out looking for you?
Put up a flare to look for us, a daylight flare, you know,
yeah,
to look for us, so
yeah.
we were just on the beach by then.
What made you decide to row 100 miles to the Isle of Wight when, you know, it would have been easier and I would have thought far safer to have gone to Jersey, say?
Well, we had been to Jersey the previous weekend, and I do come from the Isle of Wight, so we decided to go over there for a holiday and some practice rowing for this Sark to Jersey rowing race.
Yeah. What do you think of your chances now you've actually completed this run?
Well, they're pretty good chances, but we won't win the overall race because there's too many 4s and 6s in the race, but we should do pretty well in the pairs, we hope.
That's your opinion too, is it?
Well, that's if we get the boat back in time.
Well, lads, all the best. I hope you do jolly well.
Thanks
very much.
If you visit the tiny island of you'll be struck straight away by the leisurely pace of life. Whether you travel by horse-drawn cart or perhaps by bicycle, no one wants to go anywhere very fast. And who can blame them when there's so much peace and quiet to enjoy? Even a trip to the shops is a major expedition for the Sarkees. And if it's all too much for you, refreshments are never far away. But there's one day in the year when excitement comes to the island, and that's the day of the Sark to Jersey rowing race. As many as 50 small boats with their accompanying guard boats assemble in Decar Bay for the 19-mile row back to Bonnuy Bay in Jersey. There are crews from Guernsey and Jersey, and 2 separate starts, one for singles and workboats, and the other half an hour later for pairs and 4s. The morning of the race is a time for last-minute practice and advice from the experts. One of those experts is Barry Lilley from the Jersey Rowing Club. Does sea rowing require a special kind of boat?
Well, there is obviously the best boat for this type of race is what's known as an offshore coastal fall. And the difference between that type of boat and a river skiff would be that it's more seaworthy. It also hasn't got any outriggers, which they do have in river rowing. Sorry.
What about the people in the boats? Is the technique different?
The technique is different, being that again the offshore rowing, they're not allowed to use sliding seats, so therefore you're fixed in one position, and your leverage comes entirely from the arm rather than from both the arm and the legs.
Is it just a sport for the men?
No, it's obviously is mainly a men's sport simply because of their physical strength and also the endurance. But there are a few ladies who do row, and generally they do extremely well in the length of the row.
You've got one this afternoon?
Yes, there's one complete ladies crew. There's also a 16-year-old girl rowing with a 14-year-old brother in a pair, and I think there's one other young lady that's coxing in a fall.
You've rowed this race yourself how many times now?
I've now rowed it 7 times.
Once you get out there, we're sitting in the bay now. What's it like once you get out there?
Well, of course, after the start, it's well, chaotic, really. That's the best way to describe it. The faster boats are obviously tussling for position, and also trying to find their way through the slower pairs and the workboats.
Does it seem as though the end's never coming?
That's very true. You know, as I say, you're sprinting for the first couple of miles to try and get into the lead, and also to get yourself into a good position. So therefore a great deal of your energy is burnt out in that first 15 to 20 minutes. And of course you think after that, well, how am I ever going to finish this row?
30 seconds to go, or just under. The wind's freshening. They're lining on the start line now to get the best position. The senior Sark, Mr. Michael Beaumont, will shortly be raising his shotgun to set off the start of that 19-mile trek to Jersey's Bonne Nuit Bay. 10 seconds. And they're off. Barry, there's Brian Staples here. It looks as if it's getting a bit hard work for him. How does he cope with situations like this?
Well, he's coping with the situation very well, actually. We're now in the overfalls off of Sark, which of course can be very choppy in a sharp wind. And he's now ploughing through very quickly, and of course he'll be out of this within a couple of minutes.
Well, Barry, we can see who's beating the drum here, but that's not an ordinary boat, is it?
No, that's the fiberglass whaler of the Guernsey Police.
Do they usually do quite well?
They always do very well. It's obviously a fast boat designed basically for this purpose, although it was originally taken off a ship's whaler.
Oh, it certainly looks as though I don't know whether they're trying to row to get away from her or whatever.
Well, I should think she's a very good taskmaster.
Well, we're back at the start of the fours and pairs, Barry. Is there some different technique? They're all bunched together.
Well, they're all basically wanting a rolling start so that they can get good movements to get off the line quickly and out of the main bunch.
What's the youngest competitors in this section?
Well, as far as I know, they're about a 14 and a 15-year-old.
These two here, is it?
That's right, these two and the number 27.
Yeah, number 27. So what will they do now? They really stay bunched here, or do they spread out?
Well, basically the bunch will stay together for the first 10 minutes, quarter of an hour, and obviously this will sort out who's going to be the fastest, and of course this will sort of bring everyone forward.
Oh, no, we've got boat number 42 here. What is this? What is the strength of this crew?
Well, they're a very strong crew. I would say, as I said earlier, the favourites for the race. They had rather a poor start because of the bunching, but they're certainly rowing in fine form now.
The water stayed choppy, but out in front, Brian Staples was making good progress, surrounded by an armada of launches. Although at times he disappeared amongst the waves, he still made it look easy. 4 miles off Jersey, and a new leader had emerged behind us from amongst the fours. Barry, your predictions about the winners appear to be slipped slightly. We've got Rediffusion in the lead here after several salt spray minutes. What's been the situation?
Well, it's certainly a very exciting race at the moment. As I said earlier on, it was going to be a very tight competition, and basically it seems that John Bennington's crew are having a little bit of cramp trouble or something, and that the stronger crew at the moment seems to be Rediffusion, with Magnet Southern very close behind.
Is it likely to change between now and the finish?
Oh, I think anything could happen at the moment. The crews both look very tired, so therefore it will depend on who can survive and who can last the longest.
Well, we've cheated a bit by skipping ahead of the main fleet of small boats, and now it's all eyes over the harbour wall to see if Brian Staples is going to have another successful year. Another year of success. How many is it now?
6 years.
6 years? How do you feel?
As fit as I could do it again.
You could do it again now?
I could.
It looked very choppy out there, was it?
Somebody backed me for £1,000, I'll row back.
You would? It looked very choppy out there.
It was all right at the halfway through stage. At the beginning it was very choppy, but you just have to keep your pace and keep with it.
If somebody wanted to beat you next year, what would be the tip you'd give them?
Come out training with me and I'll teach them the tactics and the rowing machine in the bedroom.
And what is it now, the party up at the Wolf's Caves?
Party at Wolf Caves and anything till 3 or 4 in the morning.
So you're going out of training now?
I'm finished rowing the Sark Jersey. This is my last race. I've retired. If anybody beats my record, I'll come back.
Thanks very much. A far cry from messing about on the river. But what of the fours? Well, Rediffusion Reditronics were clear winners, and according to them, the secret is stubbornness and sheer brute force. It's a proud boast of the Sark to Jersey race organisers that they've never had to cancel a race since the event started in 1967, and this year once again the weather was kind to them. Among more than 140 rowers were 2 female crews, and they obviously knew what lay ahead. By mid-morning, Sark's decar bay was filling up with fours, pairs and singles. It was time now for final preparations. It's a long way back to Jersey, and one girl obviously feared the worst. 10 minutes to the start, and the crews begin to leave the beach. Not the occasion to hang about, the water was very cold. The experienced oarsman knows what to take with him on the voyage, and further along the beach the essential supplies are arriving. They're carefully stowed in the bows, which should be the driest place in the boat. And the experienced coach knows what not to wear. On the 19-mile row, everything must move smoothly, whether it's the oars or the muscle behind them. The secret, according to members of this ladies' crew, is to have a good breakfast beforehand. The final boats leave the beach and assemble on the start line. They're away, and we pass boat number 37, crewed by Jersey's L'Auberge du Nord. None of them had rowed before, and they tell me the paint on the boat was still wet. Out in the open sea, conditions were fairly choppy with a heavy swell, but number 26, a Guernsey entry, was coping quite well. Number 56, the whaler crewed by Guernsey Police. They gained notoriety last year when they got lost on the way back to Guernsey after the race. The gaps between the boats are widening now, but the Jersey Rowing Club ladies' crew are making headway. They were led by Sue McClure, and they went on to win the ladies' prize. Close by were the crew representing Guernsey Boat Building Services. They finished 6th overall. By now the swell was heavier, and we had difficulty in spotting Magnet Southerns, last year's runners-up. They eventually came 9th. Most crews have their own guard boat, and by the time you reach mid-race, it's comforting to know that help's there if it's needed. And more than one rower must have looked enviously at this easier way of travelling. Up with the singles, we passed veteran rower John Wakeham, and if there was a prize for politeness, he'd certainly win it. A rower's view of the finish at Bonnouille Bay, where everyone's craning to catch a glimpse of the first boat home. And it's Guernsey's Brian Staples who leads the field.
Every lady says she's going to retire. Every lady comes back again. See you later.
Not far behind, the overall winners, a private entry led by Frank Furrier. They finished in just over 2 hours 18 minutes. On the beach, Brian Staples was cooling off after his 12th race. This was his 7th singles win in a row, and he beat his own record by 10 minutes, with a time of 2 hours 40.
Well done, Brian.
Can you come and have a word? What? I thought you were going to retire, they've just said.
Well, I said I'd retire last year, but I really meant retire in a wooden boat. This is one of a fiberglass boats off of my 7 that I did last year, and I've had everybody after me to row fiberglass, so...
There was talk the conditions out there today were quite bad, is that right?
They were bad, but not as bad as what it has been in the past. The 5-6 years ago was worse than today. but it's been in my favour. I've got a weak wrist that side and I've been right-handed all the way.
So is this finally the end now?
This is it, definitely. 7th race, boat number 7, and 7 of my own boats in the race. That's it, for sure.
Conditions weren't ideal for the 15-mile race which set off from Guernsey. With winds blowing north to northwesterly and force 4, it was tough going from the start. The first Guernsey to Carteret race was in 1984, but the event has been cancelled twice since then because of bad weather. All 34 crews were hoping the weather would hold this year, and it did, but only just. First over the Carteret finish line in 2 hours and 15 minutes was Mitch Minson's Cox 6 crew from Jersey. Karen Tuchel's 4-woman crew, also from Jersey, took the ladies' prize. And Guernsey's Mick LeMaitre was first single rower home. Mick Baudin and Peter Fryer from the Jersey Police and Fire Service were first pairs, and Jersey took the team prize.
Like any sport that involves the sea, each and every boat must carry basic safety equipment. And before the race started, the scrutineers checked that not only was all the equipment on board, but also that the boat was in good seaworthy condition. Then, before the boats took to the water, there was a final briefing. The race officials had been keeping half-hourly checks on the weather conditions which were marginal for the race. Although conditions improved slightly just before the start time of 8:30, the officials only agreed to let the race go ahead because for once there was a good turnout of guard boats. It was a handicap race, and one of the early ones to leave Havlet Bay was the number 51 Standard Fours team of the 13th Guernsey Sea Scouts. Ahead of them lay an 8-mile row, taking them first to the south of Jettu. Another early starter was single rower and policeman Brian Godian. He eventually placed 9th. Then came the pairs of Steve Hume and Phil Rowe in the number 38 boat, the Ship and Crown. Last to go was the number 58, South Key Estates, an open class with the team of LePage, Pridgeon, Chappell, Robert and Perriot. They spurted forward, knowing that they must aim almost for the south of Sark to counter the pull of the north-running tide. By now, earlier starters were well ahead, and the L'Auberge de Vette open class boat were south of Jettu. It was around here that the seas were at their roughest. Batiste, Audran, Gilson, Hype and Brown must have been thinking that there were more comfortable ways of spending a Saturday morning. The loneliness of the single long-distance rower, No Cox, was sat in the back to guide John Fgrave, whose little boat battled on towards Sark. John had to be content with placing 12th. Further up the course we found another of the Standard Fours, the Sue Lee crew, number 54 boat with Duckman, Collins, Taylor, Makepeace and McCain. Now some halfway down the course there were signs that conditions were improving, if only slightly. Brothers Hillary and Walter Duckman in their pairs boat, the Business. They had a good lead at this stage, but there was to be disappointment for them on the last leg down Sark's east coast. This is where the challenge would come from. The two Johns, Gill and Van Catwick in the 37 boat, were now closing on Sark and ready for the final sprint. John Kreckler was the only canoeist in the race. He was the first to reach the northern turn down Sark's east coast, but was soon to be overtaken by much of the closing pack of boats. Close inshore, and Van Catwick and Gill challenged the other pair, Hume and Rowe, who, despite the gritted teeth, could just not find that extra bit of energy. At Massillon Harbour, the timekeepers were now getting ready to clock in the leaders. Still holding that lead came Gill and Van Catwick, a remarkable win because John Van Catwick had stood in for David LePage, who is John Gill's usual partner. In second place, with a time of 1 hour, 17 minutes and 59 seconds, came the L'Auberge de Vette team in the open class. Third, the battling duo of Steve Hume and Phil Rowe. Despite their struggle, they'd been overtaken by two boats on the last half mile. And as the rest of the field, led by the Duckman brothers, hauled towards the finishing line, the thoughts of a rest must have been sweet. But next week, they all face an even bigger test of stamina, the 21-mile round Guernsey race.
By 2 o'clock, and the preparations at Decar Bay, it was a lovely summer's day. The early morning fog and drizzle had given way to the sea. Guernsey's Channel Island Ceramic ladies crew were dressed to ward off the sun, bring up for the race. Only one rower has completed the course every year, and despite an injury to make it...
Snip, how's your hand?
Not very well today, I'm afraid. It's really killing me.
What did you do to it?
I fell off Stanley Workmate and broken a bone in the back of the hand.
Do you really think you can row 19 miles?
Well, if I can't, my car will.
Because you're after your 25th medal, aren't you?
That's right, that's what I want today, and I'm finished.
And you're going to get it, aren't you?
That's right, that's what I'm here for.
Carl, can you make it?
We'll do it. It'll take a while, but we'll get there.
Despite problems with the air horn, the starters got the message and lined up for the mass start. All the boats, whether singles or sixes, start together. Fired the cannon and off they went.
3, 2, 1, go!
In such a cramped starting line, it's important to get up front to avoid being in other boats' ways and prevent clashing more. Experienced staff to Jersey night internally was sponsored by the crew. From the start, the favourites, the Viking Warriors, in their rather unorthodox start, were up front. There's no top, and each of the 6 rows has 2 oars. Not far behind, number 75, Guernsey South Estate. The game's at Oxford 6. And in third place, another unusual craft, number 45, Guernsey's Fitness Factory. Again, no cops. This time, 5 rowers with a pair of oars. Guernsey's John Van Catwick in number 6 is no stranger to the Sark of Jersey. He's won 6 singles prizes. Most of this year's race he jockeyed for positions with the leading ladies form. Jersey's Debbie Kempster and crew. They won last year and were determined to keep their title this year. In the pairs, the winners were expected to be either this crew, boat number 37, rowed by Paul and Carl Van Catwick, or Jersey rowers Ricky Rouillet and Jez Baxter. First prize in the over 40s and singles class went to Brian Staples from the Guernsey Rowing Club. He finished ahead of both Hugh Godier from the Guernsey Police Sports and Social Club and Jersey's Colin Perret. Annie Perret was the first woman ever to row the Sark to Jersey single-handed. This year she teamed up with Sheila Cameron, and together the 2 rowers won the ladies' pairs title. At the Paternosters and into the final straights, it was obvious no one was going to catch the Viking Warriors, but it was also unlikely they'd break the 2-hour barrier. The determined South Key Estates continued in hot pursuit, but to no avail. This year's time for the Viking Warriors, 2 hours, 6 minutes and 58 seconds.
Though we weren't even close to the record, the race was so hard out there between the 2 boats. The friction between the 2 boats was unbelievable.
How much training have you done for this race?
We train at least 3 times a week in the sea at 3 hours a time and on push bikes and everything, the gym. We train nearly 7 days a week.
And what about the food you eat?
Pasta, spaghetti. The last week we've been drinking at least 3 litres of water a day. I don't know, it's unbelievable to win it. To win it on the 25th year is unbelievable.
Guernsey's South Key Estates finished just over 2 minutes later, but they were gallant in defeat.
Obviously, yeah, they're a big, strong crew, you know. We struggled with them right off the line. They took about 100 yards off us in the first half mile, I suppose, and we couldn't pull it back after then. I mean, they're a good crew, strong crew.
The fours title went to boat 69 from the Jersey Rowing Club in just under 2 hours 25 minutes. Jersey also took the pairs title. Ricky, what's your verdict on the race then?
A hard one. Very hard, very hot. Close competition, very good.
With Guernsey's John Van Catwick winning the singles as expected.
I've won 5, second last year, first again this year, so it's 6 wins, 1 second.
How does it compare with other races that you've been in?
Bad. Sea was no good. It was there's no surf there to help you along. There's a lot of tide from Sark to the Paternosters, and then we didn't have the tide exactly with us all the way down the coast. There was still no tide helping us along. And
He'd been chased all the way by Jersey's ladies leading forward, who were relieved to reach Bonry.
Well, we're really pleased because we've beaten the Guernsey girls, so that's the main thing. It was a hard row out there because it was just so calming. Dead water, it was like rowing through lead. But we enjoyed it.
But perhaps the happiest man was Snip Gill, who, despite his injury, took just 3 hours and 7 minutes to finish. The last boat took almost 4 hours and 25 minutes, a vast improvement on 1967, when it was almost 7 hours.
30 feet of smooth hull, the beginnings of a rather special rowing boat, makes its first appearance from the mould. The boat is one of a new generation of craft designed to compete in the only rowing race that takes the competitors across a stretch of the English Channel between two islands, the Sark to Jersey rowing race. Years of sea rowing experience led to the development of the lean hull. The boat must be capable of carrying 4 powerful oarsmen plus a coxswain in open water that can turn from a calm into a heavy seaway within minutes, and yet be designed to cut at the highest possible speed through the sea. The race is organised by the Jersey Rowing Club, who use the heavier, older boats for training purposes. In winter, the oarsmen plough up and down one of the island's main reservoirs, building up the stamina and timing for the event of the year. Discipline is strict, and the rowers are trained as a team under the critical eye of the coxswain, who has no hesitation with his verbal encouragement.
Lengthen it. Stretch it. Up.
On a clear day, the island of Sark can be observed from Jersey's north coast. In the foreground, the dangerous Paternoster Reef lying just over 6 miles out to sea. The reef is a major hazard and has claimed several ships that have wandered off course. The Channel Islands are sited just off the French mainland in the Bay of Mont-Saint-Michel. The tidal flow is extensive with a rise and fall of over 40 feet. This is a major problem for the rowers who start from Descartes Bay on Sark's southern coast. The course takes them to the west of the Paternoster Reef, making a dogleg in the 19 nautical mile course. From the Paternosters, they gain advantage from the tidal flow as they head for the finish on Jersey's north coast. The race ends in the quaint fishing harbour of Bonwy Bay, nestling under high granite cliffs, the skyline marked by the ITV transmitter serving the Channel Island region. So the scene is set. It's time to meet some of the characters who take part in the unique event. For that, we travel to St. Peter Port, the capital of Guernsey, the second largest of the islands. The Van Catwick family originated from Holland. A member of the family was aboard a ship torpedoed by a German submarine in the Channel during 1916 and came ashore on the Guernsey coast. Liking what he found, he later settled and the family became part of the Guernsey scene. His 4 grandsons and one of their wives now take part in the rowing race as a family unit. Paul specialises in the singles class and is a builder by trade, a job that keeps him very fit and able to take the pressure when being battered by the elements. John is unusual in the sense that he is part of the only husband and wife team competing in the race. He's a carpenter. Andrew, also in the singles class, is a welder. another occupation that builds a muscle essential for the long pull. Meet Maggie, the second half of the husband and wife pair. She's a schoolteacher by profession. Carl is a full-time lobster fisherman and is able to put his intimate knowledge of the sea to use when he races in the pairs class. Ricky Thompson, a long-time friend of the family, takes his place in the pairs class alongside Carl. They form the perfect team, Ricky as a workshop foreman. St. Peter Port Harbour on the high water is a mill pond as the family launch their boats and take off on a training run along the shore. On board the fishing boat is George Van Catwick, the father of 3 of the boys. His job is to encourage and escort the rowing boats. To this family, the rowing race is serious business. Guernsey, in common with the other islands, is self-governing, and in any sport a healthy rivalry can be detected between the islands. The rowing race is no exception, and when the day dawns, the rowers, individuals or teams, are working flat out to beat the opposition. Conditions for training could not be bettered. A calm sea and no wind as the boats glide across the water, and this a day in the middle of winter. Perfect conditions that could change dramatically when on the high spring tides the wind strikes the mass of fast-moving water condensed between the islands and France, causing heavy overfalls and short seas. Paul and his brothers look on the race as a very personal challenge.
I only did it first because everyone used to say, "Oh, I've rowed the Sark to Jersey," so I thought, "Oh, well, I wouldn't mind having a go at that." Not expecting to win. But then when I won it, then it was getting more and more competition. That's when I really started enjoying it. Well, we make the hull as light as possible, but we can't alter that at all. The hull has got to all stay the same because we take them all off the same mould. But the actual woodwork side of it, you just try and cut down on everything. I mean, some people use canvas, but basically, it's just the basics, and that's it. Got to have a certain amount of beam on the boat, as regards the length. It's got to all be, to Sark to Jersey rules. But apart from that, I mean, you can design whatever you like, as long as you stick to the measurements. We don't do no other sort of training, it's just the actual rowing, and that's it.
Aboard the Escort, Paul's father George believes he understands why the race has turned into such a unique event.
I think it's just the atmosphere alone, is it enough? You get people from all parts of Guernsey, different harbours that come out, and they've got all their boats filled up with different things, their crowds, their friends. They all meet at Sark first, and some spend the night in the Sark before. But it's just the event, and when you get to Guernsey, it's, even my wife sort of thinks she usually at Guernsey herself, and when they come in, she just rushes into the water and just greets them like, it's such a great thing. And everybody's so friendly.
So at last, the race day dawns. It's a fine July morning with calm sea and hot sun. Powerful launchers gather their chargers under their sterns and head from Jersey and Guernsey to the start point in Sark's Descartes Bay. Point Robert Lighthouse clings to the cliff face on the southeast corner. The island is considered by many to be the jewel of the Channel Island group, just 3 miles in length and 1.5 miles wide. Its permanent community numbers just over 500. The island still holds strong allegiance to its feudal past. The independent government is called the Chief Pleas, chaired by the Seigneur. It's a haven of peace for the holidaymaker. No cars, only tractors and horse-drawn vans, wagonettes and victorias. And of course bicycles are allowed on the roads. Even aircraft cannot fly below 2,000 feet over the island. And on Sundays, only 12 people are allowed to disembark from any commercial vessel, ensuring a day of peace from visitors who descend on Sark whilst holidaying on Guernsey and Jersey. Descartes Bay is a natural start point for the rowing race. The beach slopes gently down to the water, making landing and launching a simple operation. 53 rowing boats, crewed by a total of 159, are assembling in the rocky sheltering arms, whilst the guard boats and supporters make final arrangements to cover the course. It's a deceptively tranquil scene, but the competitors are checking their compasses and working out the tidal run. They know that fog is forming near the Jersey coast, and visibility could be cut down to yards, making navigation difficult. The Sark Jersey race is now international, the only sea rowing race in the world. 2 Dutch crews have accepted the challenge. Their team captain anticipates a tough race.
Well, I will be glad if we finish within 3 hours. But whether we make it or not is quite difficult to say, because we are not accustomed to this kind of boats. We usually race in very narrow and long boats with 8 oars or 4 oars or 2 oars. And so it's quite different rowing. We are used to feather the oars, and we're taught not to do here. We're not used to bend forward very much, because that's very bad for us, because then the blades come from up high in the water, and here you have to do it, otherwise you pick up the waves. And so it's hard to say. It's really hard to say, but we got a brand new boat, and my crew is okay, and we're in a winning mood, so who knows?
What about the sea? You're not used to running in chop, are you?
No, not really in chop, but these boats really went very nicely and smoothly through the chop, and I think we can manage.
Guernseyman Snip Gill is an experienced competitor. What problems can the rowers expect?
Well, I think today it'll be pretty nice. You know, there's a little bit of wind, and I'd like a little bit of chop myself, so I'm hoping for a little bit of chop.
What about the heat problem?
No, I don't think it'll bother us too much today. I think the wind's going to sort that out.
Do you expect records to tumble this year?
Yes, I think the singles could go today, and possibly the open class, but I think the singles will go again.
What's the major changes you've seen in the 17 years you've been rowing in the race?
Boats, definitely. The style and shape of the boats. Rowers haven't changed much, perhaps a little bit fitter. But I think the boats mainly.
What type of boats were you rowing then?
We used to row the old clinker dinghies and heavy punts with conventional rollocks and conventional oars in those days.
And now they've got very sophisticated.
Yes, in fact, expensive. You know, the singles are costing £300 now for a singles, and coxfuls are over £1,000, so it's an expensive hobby now.
Do you pace your rowing so that at certain points along the course you know more or less what speed you're doing?
Yes, if you can get a guard boat as well, it helps to pace you, but like after the 17 years now, it's a matter of, like you say, just carrying on, you know.
And discipline?
No, definitely discipline, and a few words to yourself.
What about training? How many hours?
I put in plenty of hours training. I've done a lot of training this year, but I hope to do better.
Do you have to take any steps to protect yourself while you're in the boat from blisters, for instance?
Yes, my hands suffer a bit, and so does my rear end. But yes, one has to take a little bit of caution.
No boat is allowed on the start line until the craft has been inspected by the scrutineers. This is an open water race, and no chances are taken. John and Maggie Van Catwick report for inspection.
Please. Check, please.
Date
That's okay, that's
687.
fine. Right.
Mirror. Whistle. Penknife.
Gate spare, yeah, right.
Gate spare. Spare oar.
Anything else? Okay, fine. That's everything on that, isn't it? Super. Okay, thanks very much, Ryan. Thanks a lot. I'll see you at the other end. Yeah. Good morning, one and all. Okay, I'll take your barrow. 5 life jackets. 1 here, 2, 1, 3, 4 and 5. Yeah. Flares. Yeah, they're in. Bucket and anchors there. Hang on, otherwise I'll get lost. I just want to see compass next. Okay, fine. Flares. Do you want to pass them up? No, that's okay. Mirror. That's okay. Torch. Whistle. Can you just turn the torch on? Fine, okay. Whistle. Right. Knife, yeah, fine. Anchor and warp, okay? Yeah. No comments on the boat, Steve? Right, fine. Thanks very much. Got a tag, please?
There's your tag. Now what about...
No, let's drop them up first.
2 o'clock in the afternoon, just after low water, and the start. Within minutes, the rowers begin to spread and the flotilla of guard boats move alongside to take up station, forming a wide corridor, keeping a close watch on the competitors. Some of the fours favour women as coxswains. They are that much lighter, making a difference as the boats tear through the water. Ahead of the crews is a long, hard slog, calling for stamina and great strength. Keeping the right pace, this is where long hours of training reap rewards. Energy must be conserved, using the length of the boat to the best advantage. The coxswains watch the timing. The race was first inspired by the example of the Ridgeway and Blythe transatlantic row during 1966. The two Atlantic rowers took part in the first Jersey to Sark a year later. This crew could be said to be somewhat off their usual beat. Carl Van Catwick keeps pace with Ricky Thompson in the pairs. They are now about a third of the way down the course and finding the sea choppy. This is being caused by the fast-running tide, and the rowers are forced to balance out the boat. The fours are breaking away from the slower boats, and the effort shows in the faces of the crews. The design of the boats placed the rowers close to the water. Handling the long paddles is no easy matter, and there are no sliding seats in the hull. You may remember the Dutch team captain spoke of the problems when having to lift the paddles well clear of the surface. Anyone who has rowed a boat at sea knows it's easy to catch a crab, but sink one oar and the overall rhythm becomes disturbed. The crew lose timing and progress is erratic, causing vital minutes to be lost. The thought in the forefront of the straining rowers is to keep the boats moving. Paul Van Catwick is well up in the singles. What's in his mind at this time?
I'm starting to feel a bit tired. I think in another hour I'll be a bit better because I always go through a stage where I get really tired and depressed for a good half hour after about 2 hours rowing. So I'll be past that stage in a minute. The hands are feeling all right. I can feel a few blisters coming up on the thumb where I usually get them. I might have to start pulling just on the very end of my fingers soon.
Paul is being watched closely by his rivals. It's interesting to study the difference in rowing style. This is where tactics enter into the race. Attempt to pace the opposition and make a last-minute break. Our husband and wife team are piling on the pressure. This race has its fair share of women competitors. But will the couple slow down before the finish?
Not really, because we do quite a lot of training and we've just worked and we do have sort of set the pace that we know is comfortable. We can sort of, if we're coming up and we've set a time for the end of a race, then put on a bit of speed towards the end. But it's we work quite well, I think.
Yeah, quite well. I don't sort of tend to push it too hard, so we can't keep it up for too long. We keep a nice steady pace, and that's about it.
The fast boats are nearing the Dogleg, turning across the Paternoster Reef. Most of the fleet is spread across a mile of sea. each boat aiming for the western end of the reef. Mistakes in navigation could mean fighting against the tide now running strongly. 6 miles to go as the fog clamps down and the heads of the paternosters form the backdrop against the rowers. Now the crews reach a psychological moment. They feel the tide start to help and with a lift in spirits bend to the oars and renew their efforts, and the Dutchmen feel success in their grasp. At last, the lead boats close up under the high cliffs of Jersey's north coast. Speed increases with calmer water and the swifter inshore tide under the keel. Ashore in Bonweep Bay, there is a sense of expectation as the race moves into the final minutes. Conditions have remained good and records could tumble. First boat over the line is a Coxed 4, crewed by Guernseymen. They've accomplished the 19-mile row in 2 hours, 8 minutes and 24 seconds, a new record time. Crystal clear water is churned by dozens of paddles as the boats make the final turn and head up to the finish. Those in the lead will pick up the trophies, but for many, it's just as satisfying to complete the course, to take part in the event. Meanwhile, an elated Guernsey crew pose for the cameras.
We broke the record the first year. We were outside last year, so it's very sweet actually to break the record again. Break our own records. Yeah, and also for Guernsey to come in first, second and third. I think it's proved a point that the Guernsey Rowing Club is back in the books again.
First Jersey boat is one of the new models. The rowing club crew take 4th place overall with a time of 2 hours, 12 minutes and 4 seconds. Boat 64, also from the Jersey Rowing Club, follow their colleagues in, just seconds later. All eyes have been watching the Dutch crew, who row for the Royal Amsterdam Rowing and Sailing Club, and willing hands are waiting to assist on the beach.
We did it in 2 hours and 21 minutes. That's great.
Well, you've covered your 19 nautical miles. How do you feel about it? Particularly
Wonderful,
on the sea.
wonderful. The only foggy part in the paternosters was kind of difficult because then we got a new compass course. We were steering right behind Annie Carré's boat, and so we followed her because we said, well, she knows the place and she knows the course. But then we got another course because it was very foggy at the paternosters, and then we managed.
Have your crew stood up to the rowing?
Well, let them speak for themselves. They feel wonderful because we came in front.
It was a good race.
The ladies' team record was smashed by a happy crew of Jersey girls. They earned their place in the book with 2 hours, 24 minutes and 10 seconds. Carl Van Catwick and Ricky Thompson also established a new record in the pairs. They show signs that the strain took a heavy physical toll.
Well done, Carl. Well done, Rick.
Carl, however, soon found a way to cool down. The family theme continues as Paul Van Catwick hove into sight. And just yards behind, brother John and wife Maggie. Paul makes the final spurt.
Well, I'm only 700 yards from the finish now, and I can hear all the crowd shouting and cheering me on. So I think I'll just give it that bit extra. I know I got it in me. And just try and put a good sprint on at the finish. But at the same time, I'll have to be careful that I don't break the oars, because that would really finish it off. So I'll wait till I'm around the rock, then I'll give it all I got over the finish line.
Paul was well rewarded with a new singles record of 2 hours, 34 minutes and 22 seconds. A row that will take some beating. The family chat and celebrations must wait as the boats are handed ashore. Maggie and John, happy with their performance, come alongside as Paul catches his breath. A modest record breaker.
Paul, new record, how's it feel?
I didn't think I had it, but I'm pleased. Very pleased.
Did you find it difficult with a short chop?
From the pattern oysters in, I found it difficult. You know, because the heat started getting me there. But, you know, I wasn't sure if anyone was in front because we had a lot of thick fog, you know, just outside the pattern oysters. But I'm pleased anyway.
Out of the 53 boats that started the long pull from Sark, just 3 failed to complete the race. Snip Gill was proof correct when he said that records would tumble on this day. The weather has been kind and sea conditions remain stable. Snip brought his craft in after a steady 2 hours, 36 minutes and 57 seconds steady row. On the rising tide, Bonwy Harbour fills with a mass of boats as the back markers head for the shore. From small beginnings, the Sark to Jersey rowing race is attracting an international field, prepared to test their skills in a unique maritime challenge.